Hi there, this is Popo, I hope you're fine. Welcome back to the Mad Chess Neuro Tournament, round 2. And today we're going to review the two games played between Gluttony and Alexander the Wanderer. So, let's get started. Okay, so for the first game, Gluttony gets the white pieces with the Genies faction, and Alexander the Wanderer gets the black pieces also with the Genies faction. Why? Because Gluttony in this tournament is the doppelganger player, so he would always mirror this faction their opponent has. So all games employing Gluttony would have the same faction both sides, so very interesting to see. So they playing the same strength and the same faction. This faction is the Genie faction, which allows your pieces to play with the bounce. Somehow on the bounce you get stronger. You can pass through the bounce as the game was cylindrical, you can bounce on them, you can, I don't know, you can bet buffed and a lot of stuff. So you're going to witness how it goes, but be careful, when you play the Genies, you have to get a larger vision of the board because you have much activity than you think. Let's see how it goes. The first game starts with pawn to d4, and we have pawn to d5, we have Vizier to f4, we have lamb to c6, and now pawn to e3 defending. We have Vizier to f5, which is played, and now Vizier to d3, asking what are you gonna do. And here, the Vizier can decide to bounce off the board to capture this pawn, and this is exactly what is done. And it seems like that you blundered something. But only problem is that you play against Genies. So the Vizier can bounce back and capture the Vizier, and this is exactly what happens in the game. And I have to say that Alexander was really disturbed of what happened, because normally you don't have the chance to play your own faction here. So the game continues with lamb to h5. Why this move? Because when it is on the bounce of the board, the lamb can also move and capture with 1-3, so like a camel. So it slides to g5, h5, and now it tries to capture here, it tries to capture here. This is actually a very nice fork. So this is captured by the Djinn, because this was just hanging a piece. So Alexander was even more disturbed and tried to kick with pawn to g6. Now we have Djinn to g5, so again this blunders a piece, but okay, when you're just tilting, you're tilting, we're not changing. And after Djinn to c8 avoiding the trade, we have lamb to e2, so developing normally. Now we have pawn to e6 deciding to kick the Djinn, and now Djinn to b5 is here. We have now a pawn to a6 which is played, so kicking the Djinn one time, and now a pawn to g5, so trying to kick the Vizier. You can't take this pawn, else you're going to be taken back. But I mean, you can play, for example, the Djinn to play the Vizier, here, and now the Sphinx has to slide. But instead we have Vizier back to g3, and now the Vizier goes to e7, trying to get better position here. We have short castle, and pawn to b6 is played. I don't know what this move is for, because it just hangs this piece, and after Djinn captures c6, Alexander was thinking, okay, he was just tired and disturbed from the start of the game, so he decided to resign this game on move 13. So it happens sometimes on tournament with high pressure, with a lot of stuff to do in your life. Okay, you're tired, so we're not judging Alexander's, that happens sometimes. But you're going to see that on the second game, they're going to play an incredible game. So let's immediately see what happened on the board. Okay, so for the second game, now Alexander Wanderer gets the white pieces with the humans faction, and of course Gluttony gets also the humans faction with the black pieces. So basically they're going to play a game of chess. So if you went for my chess, I'm sorry for you, you're going to be disappointed, but this is actually a very good game of chess which has been played, and somehow it goes with the match chess spirit. What's the match chess spirit with the humans? That all the pieces get the maximum range, and also at the same time all the pawns from 2 queens and the other faction can't. So that's actually interesting to see how they're going to manage this big power over here. So the game starts with pawn to e4, we have pawn to e6, knight to f3, pawn to d5, so the French defense, and now we have the advanced variation. We have pawn to c5, pawn to c3. You can push this immediately, but why not? We have knight to c6, pawn to d4, and we get to the main position of the advanced variation of the French defense. Queen to b6 is played, and now pawn to a3. Okay, this line can be played somehow. We have pawn to c4, and now it wants to shut the light squares, so it means that we're going to go for a very long game. Normally on this kind of move, you decide somehow to trade this, and after captures, maybe you can try to get this here and get this here. This is one of the many lines to be played in this position, but okay, this can be perfectly played. So after pawn to c4, now we have knight to d2 and bishop to d7. We have rook to b1 defending and knight to f5. And here you see that with this knight to a5, it wants to get to this very lovely square. But if you do this, that would be exchange, and now this pawn would be not good. Or even the queen captures, and this pawn isolated, you can try to do something against it. Even if it takes some time, you can put the knight. This would be defended by the bishop, and the game somehow continues. But instead, in this position, we have bishop to e2, playing to short castle, bishop to e7, and now short castle. We have knight to h6, so going on the side of the board, and try to react to this very lovely square. But we have pawn to h3, and I guess if you go here, then g4 is going to happen on the board. But after knight to f5 and pawn to g4, now the knight slides on h4 and asking the white pieces, what are you gonna do? Do you want to trade? And the white pieces want to trade. So knight captures, bishop captures, and now pawn to f4. So we have an open position on both sides somehow, but there's no big way to attack the position. So here we have bishop back to e7 and trying to see if they can do something on the queen side. So we have knight to f3, so going on the king side this time, and knight to b3, so taking care now of this very lovely spot on b3. We have bishop to e3, and now a long castle is played. And it seems like the position is drawish, or if there's an advantage, this is a very small advantage, the position. Be sure that the computer gives lines to play this, but these are crazy lines, and I don't want to cover this like a chess game, but rather than a chess game. Here we have queen to c2, which is played, so trying to get advantage with this very nice snaggle if the rook dares to move. We have bishop to a4, so trying to get for full discoveries. So pawn to f5 is played, and here, okay, you have to be careful because this can be played here. For example, if you decide to play knight to d4 here, you can have this kind of capture here. And let's say after knight captures e2, there's king going here, and now you are attacked with the queen here, so maybe you have to put the queen away. Let's say that the queen decides to go here for the trade, then the queen captures here on a7, and he can capture the knight at any time. So this position is kind of messy here. I didn't cover all the line. I'm sure there's some tricks to be played. With pawn to f5, the computer says that, okay, this is playable, but you can run into completely crazy tricks. And we have queen to b5 here, be sure that the bishop is defended, and now we have bishop to d1, so saying that if you go for a trade, I'm going to capture that. So we have rook to f8, and now queen slides to g2, and this is the best move to be played by the computer. So very nice. I guess the idea here is to try to get an advance here, to be sure that you would have some pressure over here, and be sure that knight would be rotated, maybe put the knight back on this square. I mean, this is a very lovely move to be played. Pawn to h6, and now we have pawn to h4 advancing forward. We have queen to c6, and now pawn to h5. Here, okay, this can be played. You can try to get this move. The only problem is that after captures, now the rook would have some place here on the board. So pawn to h5 is rather played, and now king to b8, which is played. I can't understand really this move, but this is a move that can be played. Maybe it wants to get out in the line of sight of any future open. Now we have bishop to f4, so aligning with the king and try to get for something nasty. We have king to a8, so getting ready to the corner. Somehow it's maybe a little weakening the king, because now it takes some time to open the pawn here and be sure that it would not be back ranked. But okay, this is manageable. With bishop to g3, which is played, pawn to h6, so now be sure that the king has some space. Bishop to h4, and now asking for a trade. We have queen to d7, be sure that the trade would be handled, and now we have bishop captures. And here it allows a queen to g3. You see that now the queen lures into the black squares and it tries to go the knight here, try to push here. Like, you see that something is going on, and the white piece seems to have a little the advantage over the position. So Gluttony plays rook to g8, and now we have rook to f2. Maybe the idea is to double the rook here, I don't know. We have pawn to f6 trying to push and open. Okay, the position gets very tricky. Now we have queen to h4, so if you decide to capture, then the queen's going to capture. And now a queen goes back to e8. So you see that for now the game handles pretty well here. We have bishop to c2, so if you decide to capture now, the outpost would be taken by the bishop, and pawn captures here on the dark squares. Here you can decide to capture with the knight, and here, of course, this is played in the position. If you capture with the pawn, I think this would be slightly weaker, because maybe the black queen would try to get advantage, try to slide here, and try to get some action going up here. So we have knight captures, and now rook goes to f6 to be sure that this pawn wouldn't have any trouble, but this gives the very nice outpost here for the knight. But first, rook to e1 is played, we have pawn captures and pawn recaptures, and somehow you see that the position of white weakens with the pawn structure, but at the same time, it gets a lot of activity. I mean, the knight can decide to go on the outpost here, the rook is pretty well placed in the line of sight of the queen, so this is why a queen c8 is played and applies a little more pressure here. We have knight to g6 trying to get this very nice spot, and it threats to go here for a fork. So of course a queen to d8 is played, and now okay, there's a lot of things going on here with the queens seeing each other, there's a threat of captures, and after recaptures then the queen would capture the other queen. So in this position queen to h1 is played, and now he wants maybe to get some pressure over this pawn once the rook decides to go here. So we have bishop back to c6 defending the square, and now okay, you can decide to go really messy and try to exchange here and get a very isolated pawn here, but here rook to e5 is played, and this is actually the best move in the position. We have rook to e8 which is played, now gets tricky, wants to exchange, but now the queen goes to h3. Here maybe sliding this rook here could be interesting because the pawn is still not attacked, but here that can be very tricky because there's the queen going here for a check. And if you don't pay attention enough, you can have some ugly tactics going on. So I can understand why a queen to h3 was played to be sure that this pawn would have never some big trouble here, and it can try to get here in the way or even control this. I don't know. So here we have queen to d6 which is played, applying pressure over this rook. So now queen to e3 is played, so very nice maneuvering from the queen going here and here. We have rook to d8 which is played now, and rook to e2. So this looks like an Harleking's gun, and I'm not sure is that's really easy to spare, because I guess the next move here is to put the rook down here, and once this is done, everything's going to crumble. So we have a knight to a1 trying to threat the bishop, but now bishop goes back to d1 and still controls the diagonal up here, and maybe he would try to get here on the move, but now knight backs to e3, and rook to e6 is played. And wow, this is a very big position here. You have to be very careful on where you're going to put the queen. Here a rook captures, pawn captures. Here the best move is to play the queen back to b8. Somehow if you decide to trade here and put that here, maybe you play the queen to e7. Now there's queen to g3 check, and it seems like the black pieces get into the position. Only problem is that you have, excuse me, you have after I try to remember the position. I guess this was, I don't remember. After this, and this, I guess this was this. What I should show. So there's this check here, and something happens on the board. But we have rook captures. Pawn captures. Yeah. Okay. So here, yeah, the best move. Excuse me. I remember now to go queen to b8. And if you decide to capture, and then go here, then there's a queen going up here, and after here, then you can try to put the queen back on d6, and you see that you have less control on the position than before. So the queen would exchange, I'm not that sure, so maybe the queen would go back on de2, and now the game continues with rook to e8, and okay, the game gets complicated. But here rook captures, disallowed pawn captures, and this is a passed pawn, and now this is even more difficult to play against, so Gluttony gets some tricks upon their steals with bishop to e8, but now a pawn to e7, and after rook to d7, now we have a bishop to c2. So you can't really take this, this is going to be taken, and now this will be very hard to deal with the position here. So make sure that if this is taken, the post is still on the game. We have a knight back to a5, so trying to reroute the piece in the attack here. But now we have a bishop to h5, f5, and it attacks the rook. So the rook goes to c7, but now queen to f4 is playing, and now he really wants to go for the trade. And once everything would be traded, this would allow the humans to be better. So here in this position, queen captures, knight captures. I mean, if you try to get here, this seems to be very complicated, because now there is a knight to e5 which can be played, attacks again the queen. Maybe the position can be repeated, but after queen goes here, like, very hard to play against this. Maybe he wants to get back here, I don't know. So here queen captures, knight captures, and now you see that you don't have enough to do, because the knight is going to get back, the rook is going to enter the position. I mean, you're not winning in this position. So this is in move 47, if I'm well, that Gluttony decides to resign the game, as there was not a lot of things to be done. I think the humans are winning in this position. If you go on a nice set of chess, it is, I guess, plus 5.2 points for the white pieces, but you can still play this, and this is long and painful for the black pieces. But you see, I tried to go very quickly on the game because there was not a lot of mistakes being played, and I'm not even sure that my lines are correct. Because if you see the review on the computer, it gets 91 and 93% of precision on this game. So they play this game like absolute beasts, and I have to thank themselves to this game, because this game was incredible. So thank you to have provided this very cool chess game, and we're going to see each other next time for another round of the Match Chess New Era tournament, and I guess now we would switch to round 3 after that. So we're going to see each other next time. See you then. Bye.